it's not like the MAGA types, the Trumpian disaster nationalists, aren't trying to construct a disaster nationalist version of the country. They're not saying we need disaster nationalism that will fix it. Not like in the way that like a young man who might have saw the March on Rome, got very inspired by it, might have gone home and said, it's even an anecdote I read once in one place, I forget when. He said to his father, in your day, it was all about the class struggle. But in my day, it's very clear that for us, it's a rebirth of the nation. What we need is, and he starts talking about that fascism is the method by which we will revive and restore the nation. Disaster nationalism, Trent, in the way that you're talking about, is very much not the case. That this is not like a coherent thing that we need to adopt this thing. It's more like just it's a category that almost is like it's because we need to categorize. That's why it exists. It's not a self-conscious.
Of a contradictory reality. Well, and I think even to tie into like a big part of his analysis of Pascal is that Pascal belonged to this like interesting social strata of, I think it's like the noblesse de robe. I don't know how to pronounce it in French, but this very interesting strata of society that was related to the crown in a very like, in a way that it was like a disappearing class, more or less. It's one of these transitory classes that's kind of caught up in like the movements of history, very tied to like the official offices that were provided by the English or by the French crown at that time during the absolutism. And he was Jansenist. And, the Jansenists were like the Calvinists, but in the Catholic Church, at least doctrine wise. And he makes a big point about actually the Jansenists and the Calvinists hated each other. And it was precisely, he's like, you can only make sense of this when you move beyond doctrine and try and analyze them within their like social conditions. And like the Jansenists, stayed within the church and they withdrew from all worldly activity to like almost a radical extent. Like they were very like hardline about that. And I think you could even see this once again in the face of this sort of tragic worldview. And they're like almost like they're interesting because they're almost incredibly uncompromising about this. And that like I feel like the lone wolf people are also this very like uncompromising like figure in a certain sense. I might just I'll post in the Discord about. I wanted to discuss the Pascal book with y'all in general. I feel like it'd be very interesting.
I was just gonna say in like response to like all the what y'all were saying that like what is being described here is like this disaster nationalism, this like tragic worldview is like, I mean, you could be like it's a vibes based modernism, but in like a more direct sense, it's like it's a revitalization of like a modernist universalist like thought, but through a simulacrum.
Yeah,
like it's through the simulacrum of what the it's the simulacrum problem.
Well, you know what else happened with modernity and modernism was a new conception of time.
So
and
true.
The way we section up our time. It's okay.
I really don't like that. Right there's no way around this. It's like some of this has to stay in the recording too, like me, because like Brendan's making a point, and then I interrupt to say, "Oh, never mind, I can stay." And then
why don't you just?
I think it's awesome.
Yeah, it's fine.
We'll finish your.
I actually don't like making points. I really like trailing off at the end, anyways. I was gonna do that, so this actually worked even better because now it looks like you interrupted my point when I wasn't really making one.
So first, I interrupted Trent to say I have to go, and then I interrupted Brendan to say, "Oh, never mind, I can stay." So Ben, as soon as you start talking, I'm gonna interrupt you.
Okay, I'm prepared. Thank you. So yeah, I think obviously Seymour's riffing off of the term disaster capitalism coined by Naomi Klein a couple decades ago, almost, I think. And disaster capitalism is it's not like some new movement of it's still capitalism, right? It's just adapting to the limitations of the world order and opportunistically seizing upon openings wrought by destructive forces, be they man-made or otherwise. And this could be, in a sense, we're dealing with a post nationalist nationalism, at least in the sense of nationalisms of yore. This is nationalism trying to operate with, as Jason puts it, what is. And what is made up of disparate, contingent social forms, and the sort of residue of previously constructed orders, and we're seeing all of that is sort of on the table now, and yet nationalism is still a force, and I think that is sort of what Seymour's getting into, and it is a force necessarily made. It is so that's one of the reasons why it is post-fascism, because its coherence. Fascism is much more coherent than what we were dealing with, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
And certainly socialism is. I mean, to the point that it is not and has not been historically. There have been realpolitik reasons why it has betrayed itself and so forth. What we're dealing with now, with what Seymour's terming disaster nationalism, is necessarily incoherent, because reality is incoherent. So it is dealing with what exists. It's almost just a collection of opportunism writ large.
I was reading recently a thinker who had described that that capitalism was. I'm going to be a final crisis person here for a minute, but that capitalism essentially lost the Cold War in the 70s and 80s due to the financial crises that were happening, but then was able to be put onto some form of life support because you were able to because of their deals with oil industries and selling oil with the dollar. That's all complex, but essentially that capitalism has been on this life support for a while, and not to get too morbid, the longer a person is on life support, not able to care for their own body, the organs start dying, the parts of the body start dying, start rotting away. And I feel like you can actually describe disaster nationalism and its incoherency as just the effects of that. If we're going to be a final crisis person, which I'm going to happily be in this moment, and be proved wrong eventually, I do think it's when you're in a terminal crisis, when you're on life support, it's not going to make any sense. Reality is going to stop making sense. There's no coherency in anything. A coherent politics is seen as utopian at this point.
I think I don't think I don't want to disagree. I think I accept that framing. I also think that the fact that that's which I would just say that since that's true, I think it really does help make the case for a very serious re-engagement with Hegel.
Oh yes, yeah.
The notion that capitalism and communism are these two distinct things. They were competing and they won one out. Makes a lot less sense, especially considering what you just said, that capitalism is on life support and it actually did not win out. It's because the human condition in a totality, as the world has increasingly become integrated and globalized, liberalism, socialism, fascism are all internal contradictory developments within the human condition. And it's not that communism lost and now capitalism is here, or that capitalism lost and whatever. It's that we haven't the play is ongoing, and these categories that we use to describe developments only make sense they only make sense if we can recognize that this internal development and the working out of contradictions is happening to the human condition as a whole. And so, if the liberal variety of the construction of the maintenance of human society officially it's one, that just means that all those other contradictory developments are just they're going to play out in different ways now. Yeah.
Disaster nationalism is we've described how like disaster nationalism isn't like a thing that people support, but what disaster nationalism is almost the ushering in of the common ruin of man.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think to bring that, you know, not to bring it back to, actually, yes, to bring it back to the Goldman again. What do you call it? Well, I think like the common ruin of the contending classes, or, you know, the classic socialism or barbarism. And, you know, you know, and we see, you know, disaster nationalism has to do with the victory of barbarism in that, or rather the wager on barbarism in that choice. And so like Goldman obviously makes a big central part for him also is the, you know, Pascal's wager. And he also posits a sort of Marxist wager on, you know, against that versus, you know, sort of the classic Pascal formulation of the wager on like, you know, it's better to be a Christian even if God doesn't exist because of the, you know, potential reward for infinite happiness, and, you know, basically a wager on transcendence and the infinite. And his argument is, you know, that there is a Marxist wager that is a wager on, you know, imminent historical, you know, utopian desire, and that it has to be structured in this way of a wager because it's uncertain, because it's you know, contingent, because you don't have the evidence of its certain, you know, certainty before you, and blah blah blah. But I think also, so, you know, obviously there's that. Like I think we can see like a lot of people are willing to wager on the barbarism side of things, you know. But I think when we look at I think when he talks about manifestos later on, and I think this ties into sort of like grappling with an incoherent reality. Like he talks about the manifesto productions of lone wolves express what the counterterrorism expert Florian Hartleb calls a personal ideology of grievances, or to put it another way, a personal conspiracy theory. It blends a program of stylized revenge with a desperate attempt at sense making. And I think it's such a fascinating phenomenon because, like, if you like think about like at the level of like what is the person writing these manifestos trying to like accomplish, and I think it can't really be understood at the level of content. Like, of course, the content of the manifesto is going to be this like very incoherent, this personal ideology of grievances. But then, like, when you factor it in and like tie it into whatever usually self-destructive act that manifesto ends up being tied to, and like that, it becomes, I think, this way of like almost ideologically, like at a personal level, legitimating what is this like wager that they made, that they embarked on. And it's like this even more nihilistic. There isn't even, it's not like, you know, because you could look at like early Christian martyrs during the early church, and they're making a wager on, you know, redemption and whatnot in their act of martyrdom. But I think here there's this even more like nihilistic, like there is a wager on a sort of like really fucked up version of redemption that isn't really tied into like salvation or anything in the same way, that really is like this like spectacular like in the like, you know, conceptual sense of the spectacle, like self-annihilation that I think has to do with right, for the core du corps of the conspiracy theory is not only that they're all out to get me, but also that nothing makes sense. And it has to do with them making sense, not only of the world, but of like the wager that they made on that world, would kind of be, I don't know. I just found that I find manifestos as a phenomena to be very interesting because it's like what, you know, even at the level of like hypothetical, like if there were to be a productive goal from their point of view, from the person writing it, for other people, it would just be for other people to take it up and then write their own manifestos and then also self-annihilate. And like, there's not like, you know, it's not like the Communist Manifesto where it does provide this like theoretical, you know, conceptual framework that people could build on or something like that. There's nothing in the content of the manifesto that like contributes to anything like that. But at the level of the form, I think there's this like very strong mimesis, this mimetic aspect of it,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, it's like when he says that the lone wolf is an entrepreneurial barbarian,
Yep.
a one-man
Yeah.
pogromist
Holy
who wants a
Yeah.
one-man pogromist who wants to be copied.
Yep.
And like,
yeah,
you can kind of think of the kind of state, let's call it the state-managed troll farms as like a well. So there's the state troll farms, and there's the one-man, the lone wolf, like the Anders Breivik types. That these are both. There's much less contradiction between the two. That these are not nearly as distinct. There's not nearly as distinct as it appears. It's not like, well, on the one hand you've got the kind of online kind of vague corralled mass, and then on the other hand entirely you have the lone wolf. But the whole point is that, like he says, is an entrepreneurial barbarian, a one-man pogromist who wants to be copied. And Trent, what you just said, I think really kind of helps flesh that out. Actually helps make it make a lot of sense. It's the lone wolf is never wanting to stand out as a lone wolf. The whole point is that each of us can be a lone wolf.
Yeah.
And we all should. And
Yeah.
It's basically taking the logic of the internet troll farms and putting it out into the world. Because, when you get online, you're on Twitter and you like fucking harass people, you are doing it as an individual, but you help contribute to, I don't know a good term for this. It's whatever. You're a part of an overall social phenomenon. The reason why it's called social contagion is because all these individuals participate as individuals. They help create this collective. You help kind of create the egregore, which is the whatever the end result is, which is usually like you ruin someone's life. And so the lone wolf shooter is the same thing. We just don't really treat it in the same way because I think this is really hard to conceptualize. It's really hard to kind of to make sense of it all, to rationalize. But I actually think that Seymour, again, like I said in this chapter, especially, he does a really good job of making the case I just made, but like more clearly and with a lot more words.
We hold on to something that we're trying to continuously expand, and
and it allows you to actually be productive with your negation.
Yeah,
because you have this like minimal like affirmation of something.
Yeah.
Then you can do the pessimist thing, and it doesn't just become this like cynical exercise, right?
Right.
It actually becomes like a critical procedure.
And it allows us to be in critical solidarity with literally everyone.
Yeah.
So, well, it's so good to be with you guys. I'm going to let Chris know that we're wrapping up.
Rest in peace, Michael Parenti, and solidarity forever.
Indeed, solidarity forever, and with you, both of you.
And also with you. And with your spirit.
And also with you.
Рабочие и крестьяне не смогут прожить без нас. Без нас некому будет установить порядок, определить работу, принудить к труду. Без нас все развалится.